Tell me about a time when your loved one was not what you thought he or she would be like. Okay, so I, 29F, was 23 when I met Daniel. And I swear to God, at first he just seemed like one of those slightly awkward guys who probably had a really intense Reddit history and a mild porn addiction. Like harmless, kinda cute, nerdy. He wore socks with sandals and had a weird obsession with fountain pens. I thought, okay, quirky. I can work with quirky. We met at this underground poetry night. Don't ask, I was in my artsy phase, and he came up after I read a piece about heartbreak and started quoting Bukowski. I should have known then. First red flag? He said he loved how raw I was, and that not enough women embrace their filth. I thought he meant emotional messiness, you know? Turns out no. He meant literal filth. Fast forward 2 weeks, we're dating. He's funny, super attentive, always texting sweet things. But the third time I went to his place, I found a handwritten list taped inside his medicine cabinet. It was titled, "To Do With Her." I kid you not. Bullet points included: film her sleeping, hair from brush Ziploc, train her to purr, control food intake gradual. I noped out right there. Or tried to. He begged me to stay. Cried. Said he was just experimenting with a story idea for a script. I bought it, for like 3 more dates. Then the sex got weird. He asked if he could watch me cry while I eat cake. Literally made me a red velvet cake, dimmed the lights, and just watched me with this unsettling smile while I sobbed into dessert. Said it was so pure. Anyway, I eventually ghosted him. Changed my number, blocked him everywhere. 6 months later I found a private Tumblr page he made, dedicated to me. Photos he'd secretly taken, journal entries analyzing my facial expressions, even some bizarre edits of me photoshopped into Victorian paintings with captions like, "My Dirty Angel," and "Whimper Queen." Please ladies, trust your gut. If a man says he likes your sad energy, run. Bro, that "To Do With Her" list made my skin peel off. That's not just creepy, that's horror movie creepy. He was like 3 steps away from keeping your eyelashes in a vial. I'm glad you got out. Also, how the hell did he get hair from your brush without you noticing? Like, he was already thinking 5 seasons ahead into his Netflix true crime doc. I was 19. First year in college, wide-eyed, fresh off a breakup, and stupid as hell. I met Alex in my psych class. He was 27, wore corduroy pants, smoked a pipe like it was the 1800s, and always said things like, "The system has us all in shackles." Naturally, I was like, wow, deep. First convo we ever had, he told me I had therapy eyes. I was like, what does that even mean? He just stared at me and said, "They make you want to confess sins." I should have thrown my textbook at him and run, but instead I got flattered. A week later we were dating. Got weird fast. He would only call me by different names, never mine. He'd cycle through them like characters. One day I was Beth, the next I was Ophelia. He said calling me the same name twice limited my narrative. He also made me write my sins in a notebook every Sunday and read them to him in candlelight. If I didn't have any sins, he'd accuse me of withholding and punish me by, get this, giving me the silent treatment for days. Oh, and he had a rule: I wasn't allowed to wear underwear. At first I thought it was just a kinky thing. But then he'd do this thing where he'd pat-check me in public. Like literally slide his hand up my dress just to make sure I was obedient. One time he did it in line at Target. In front of an old couple. I wanted to die. But the breaking point? He asked me to dress up like his mother. I kid you not. Brought me a floral house dress, pearls, and a red lipstick he claimed she used to wear. Said he wanted to work through his childhood wounds together. He laid on my lap and suckled my fingers while crying about his 3rd grade teacher. I left while he was in the shower the next morning. Took my shoes, my bag, and the sin journal and tossed that shit into a dumpster behind CVS. Still have no idea if any of what he told me about his life was real. Honestly, I think he was a walking collection of unprocessed trauma and Kafka quotes. Ladies, if a man says you remind him of his mom, do not stay for the plot twist. Therapy eyes? Nah. That man needed 5 therapists and a priest. The finger-suckling thing just broke my soul. Also the rotating names. You weren't a girlfriend, you were his living, breathing psychosis simulator. No underwear check. At Target, girl. I'd have pressed charges with a coupon. Yeah, you read that right. A contract. So I met Elias at my gym. He was that personal trainer that always wore all black, even when it was 90 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and acted like smiling was a weakness. He had one of those weirdly quiet but intimidating vibes. But he was hot. Like stupid hot. So of course I ignored every single red flag flapping in the wind. First couple weeks were intense. Like, amazing sex, long talks until 3 a.m., surprise playlists sent to my email with names like, for when you miss me while you sleep. Thought I hit the jackpot. Then one night, I found a printed document on my pillow when I got out of the shower. It was titled, Emotional Monogamy and Conduct Agreement, version 3.1. I thought it was a joke. But no. My man had created a literal relationship terms and conditions. Some highlights. I was only allowed to have 3 close male friends, and I had to list them by name. I had to text a proof of location selfie every time I went out past 10 p.m. If we argued, I had to wait 24 hours before texting any emotionally charged content. Once a week, I had to write a gratitude letter to him. And it had to be handwritten. In blue ink. Yo. I was like, is this a romance or a hostage negotiation? But the wildest part, he made me sign it. Told me all healthy relationships require structure. I signed it. I know. Things spiraled quick. He started tracking my period and would say things like, I can tell your tone is shifting. You're entering your luteal phase. He had a freaking calendar and hormonal charts in his notes app. He also started logging my mood fluctuations. I only found out when he left his laptop open. There was a folder labeled, Ari's Emotional Performance, Q1. Eventually he added a clause about eye contact limits with strangers. Like I was in a cult. I broke up with him in the most anticlimactic way ever. I just never responded to his weekly gratitude email. Radio silence. He sent one last message. Breach of contract noted. Thank you for participating in this experience. This man treated our relationship like a seasonal internship. Ari's Emotional Performance, Q1, just sent me into another dimension. He was running you like a data analytics firm. I swear some men aren't people, they're failed startup apps that gain sentience. Girl WTF. Luteal phase? Not even my GYNO knows that much about me. I met Nate at a Halloween party. He was dressed as a priest, which now feels like foreshadowing in the most cursed way. He was charming, made killer cocktails, and kept quoting weird philosophy stuff like, truth is in the gaze. I thought he was just being artsy. We started dating fast. First week he'd send me super sweet texts. I wish I could see you even when I'm not with you. I thought, I was wrong. That wasn't romantic. That was literal. Because one day I'm at his place and I noticed a weird little statue on his bookshelf, like a decorative owl. Cute. But then I looked closer and saw a tiny pinhole camera inside its eye. I confronted him. He said, I kid you not. Yeah, I like watching you when you think you're alone. It's the purest version of you. Turns out he had 5 of those hidden cameras around his apartment. When I asked if he recorded me, he said, no, that would be unethical. Like, sir? So just live surveillance is fine? It gets worse. He asked me to start wearing his clothes around my apartment, so the fabric remembers you. Sent me home with his hoodie, which had a tag inside reading, Return to Nate's body. Yes, handwritten. He also told me to keep my webcam on during our phone calls. Not FaceTime. Phone calls. So he could observe my natural habitat. And anytime I looked directly at the screen, he'd whisper, don't look at me, just be. Like, this man was dating me like I was a gorilla in a Jane Goodall documentary. Last straw? I caught him sitting outside my apartment at 4 a.m. Just parked in his car. Lights off. When I opened the door and freaked out, he calmly said, you seemed restless last night. I felt it. Moved out of my place the next month. Got a new number. Pretty sure he still watches my Instagram stories even though he's blocked. Creepy little priest man. Return to Nate's body sounds like the tagline to a horror movie I never want to watch. This dude was running a National Geographic episode and calling it love. This is why I don't date guys with bookshelves. I should have known from the first date. He took me to this weird little antique bookstore and said, I love how objects remember touch. Like, okay, chill man, it's a copy of Moby Dick, not a haunted mirror. His name was Julian. Of course it was. That's not even a name, it's a lifestyle. At first, he was the kind of romantic that makes you feel like you're in a movie. Wrote me poetry, walked me home in the rain, kissed my hand like it was 1873. Thought I was finally getting the soft boy experience everyone on TikTok cries about. But then the weirdness crept in, slow, quiet, and covered in rose petals. He started collecting things. Not gifts I gave him, no. Just things I touched. A receipt I left in his car. A paper napkin from a pizza joint. A strand of my hair off his couch. I found a drawer full of this stuff. He called it the shrine. Let me repeat, the shrine. When I asked him why he kept literal trash, he looked genuinely hurt and said, these are the relics of us. Bro thought he was dating a saint. And then came the teeth. One day I chipped a tooth on a popcorn kernel. I told him casually over text. That night he shows up with a tiny velvet box. Inside it, a baby tooth. Not mine. He said, now we both carry broken pieces. I'm not kidding. I almost vomited. But the true horror? He had a journal. I shouldn't have read it, but I did. One entry said, she touched the rim of her glass 3 times before drinking. That means something. I'll find the pattern soon. My man was literally building a code out of my fidgeting habits. I broke up with him in public in a crowded restaurant, so he couldn't try to turn it into a dramatic poetic monologue. He still tried to hand me a pressed flower at the end. I left it on the table next to the bill. Burn your shrine, Julian. Relics of Us is the most deranged thing I've read all week, and I work in a psych ward. Also the tooth? The tooth? I'd need to be rebaptized. That flower is cursed BTW. Someone throw it in the ocean.